Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Table of Geeks podcast. We are once again joined by Jose.
What's up?
And Emma.
All I can think to say is adios, so...
That's goodbye.
Adios.
We're just getting started. Why are we leaving? And also,
for coffee.
with us we have Larry the Sound Guy.
Ciao.
Oh my god.
On team!
What? Today we're going to be talking about a very special topic, especially for myself and Emma, because this is actually how we became friends like 10 years ago. We're going to be talking about it's D&D. So
I love how you said especially for you and Emma. It's only for you and Emma.
I'm sorry, Jose. Larry also plays D&D, but I'm excluding Larry for right now because this is how me and Emma met and became friends for like 11 years now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's been a minute.
Yeah,
Oh, she's your Jill.
James and I bonded over trying to beat the crap out of each other when we first met.
That's great.
Valid.
So the very first one is describe the overview of what it is. Emma, you go first.
Oh, no pressure. Just, summarize the entirety of Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah. Well, when you get tired, switch it over. I'll take the other half. We'll just keep switching back and forth.
5 words or less.
5 words or less. Okay, the gist, real quick.
Roll dice, kill baddies, profit.
Literally. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's D&D. D&D is where you create a character and you can get in depth with it as you want, or you can, just kind of play around. And then you hang out with your friends and you roll little plastic dice or metal dice if you're fancy. And depending on like what the dice say, if you get a high roll or a low roll or whatever modifiers your specific character has, then you can take actions in the world and you can be a team of heroes and save the day, or you can slowly descend into darkness and be edgy and evil if you so desire.
Or you can just be edgy and a good guy too.
You can be edgy and a good guy. Met several edgy good guys in my time.
My entire family died.
It's a fun game. It's a good excuse to hang out with your friends, and especially like if you really enjoy storytelling, reading books, it's a really good thing to do. Very fun hobby.
It also slowly absorbs your life. You wake up, man, I've been running games or been in games for 8 years now. What is reality? Then you walk outside, so it's like, hey, look out, there's a bus coming. It's like, oh, hang on, pull out a D20, roll the dice. I rolled a natural 2 on the athletics check and get hit by a bus. That's basically what D&D ends up becoming. We end up just comparing everything to our character stats, which actually is a great segue to lead into what the character sheet is. Character sheet is basically your character. And even an idea about D&D, like Jose, I know you know a lot about like video games and stuff like that.
Yes.
But this is, your character sheet is whatever you want to be. If you want to be a dude who's actually a whale, but as a druid whale and has become a human, you can do that technically. Can
I be a mermaid?
Are you calling me fat?
No, and Emma, no, you cannot be a mermaid. We will go over this again. I will put you back inside of a jar of alcohol and pickle you.
Actually, in her defense, again, I know nothing about D&D, but I'm doing research for this episode, and I'm looking at the different races, and I'm like, please tell me they have merfolk. Please tell me they have merfolk.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
They do.
I just want to be a half-fish pretty woman who lures men to death through the power of my voice.
So a siren?
That's all I want. Yes.
Just sirens weren't mermaids in the original myths, but whatever. Go ahead.
Bird people. I'll be a bird mermaid. I don't care.
It's like we talked about last time, Jose, where like different monsters are just kind of blended together.
Yeah.
But with D&D, it's very much you play whatever you want. As long as the DM, the Dungeon Master, approves it, which I've been a Dungeon Master for 11 years. But with this kind of concept of this, the DM is the storyteller. He's the person that is the world. And everybody else is the player. They're the people experiencing it. The Dungeon Master is the one that explains what's going on in the world, plays all the non-playable characters, makes the plot, and your job is to solve said plot. Emma.
The basic premise of your character sheet, for those of you who have never played D&D, and excuse me if I keep coughing, my coffee was extra dairy heavy today. You have, at least in 5e, 5th edition, you have 6 character stats, and they all relate to like some kind of physical or mental attribute that your character would have. So you have your strength, which is, very obviously what it takes to like jump a 10-foot leap or climb up a wall or move a boulder, that type of thing. You have dexterity, which is your limberness and how lithe you are, so how good you are at like dodging
I'm a slippery little snaky
arrows.
snake.
Yeah, sneaky little snaky snake. How good you are at like hiding, or how good you are at pickpocketing other people. So the edgy rogues love their dexterity stat. Constitution, which is your physical hardiness, like how if you drink a poison, how well are you going to handle that if you are in a drinking contest, which happens in pretty much every D&D campaign I've ever played in. How long your character is able to continue drinking before they pass out. You have your intelligence, which is obviously just your intelligence. So how learned are you? How much about nature or religion or history are you aware of?
Nature's wisdom.
Oh, I lied. My bad. Then there's wisdom, which is less your learnedness and how book smart you are, and more how attuned to the ways of the world you are. So finding something that's hidden, your perception check, or being in a cold tundra and you're trying to survive, how learned are you in ways to live your life? And then last but not least is my personal favorite stat, never least, is charisma, which is your talkiness. How charismatic are you when you speak with other people? Are you a good liar? Are you more of like the persuasive type?
Oh, darling, you know that my charisma's the best possible.
Oh yeah, for like all of my favorite classes in D&D, charisma is the spellcasting. What is the word? Thingy doodle. It's the spellcasting thingy doodle. So that's what you base all your spells
modifier.
off of. Yes, that's the word.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've only DM'd and been in like a numerous of games, but it's okay. Just forget what modifier means.
Look, my players know that my brain doesn't work. So
Jose, are you following so far?
Fire bad, tree pretty.
Pretty much.
No, I mean that was I never played D&D, but I did play games like Dragon Age where they have like a talent tree, stuff like that. Put points towards, your constitution, like, for HP and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with how that works. So as far as this particular topic is concerned, yeah, I'm able to follow along and understand. So yeah, keep going. You guys are doing great.
Well, I'll take the next one. The next one is going to be your skills. I'm not going to go through all of them because then we'd be taking 35 minutes to go through every single skill. But there is things like athletics and acrobatics. Athletics is how strong you are and how far you can jump, versus acrobatics. How good are you at doing a cartwheel 17 times across a tightrope, basically? Then you have things like religion, where you can know everything about religion. Is sleight of hand, how well you can snack stuff. Sneaking, how well you can be stealthy. Arcana, how well can you identify something as magical. There is perception, how well can you see the guy hiding in the bushes 5 feet away. Survival, if you're out in the wilderness and you need to find a road or find something to camp underneath, survival checks. It's all just different things you can use for a game to pertain of what the role it needs to be.
I didn't know that there was religion in this game.
There's a whole pantheon. There's actually, I'm going to get into that later with him about who our favorite gods from D&D is. I'll even let Larry join in on that.
Oh, so far it's been Timora.
Okay, we'll get to that later, Larry. So, Emma, do you want to continue character sheet, or do you want to move on from the character sheet? Because all we really have left is like spell slots and stuff like that, and that's not really.
Yeah, there's so you have your hit points, obviously, which is your health. So how many hits you can take. You have your AC or your armor class. So depending upon what kind of armor you're wearing, as opposed to light armor, medium armor, or heavy armor, your AC will go up. Your dexterity also factors into that as well a little bit too, so long as you're not wearing like full plate armor, then you can't really
You have
dodge
disadvantages if you are wearing like heavy armor.
Yeah. But if you're wearing light armor, medium armor, then you still kind of get some litheness.
Minus chamber.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then there's your initiative. So whenever combat starts, everyone has to roll on a d20 or a 20-sided die. And then, again, depending upon your dexterity, you get a little bonus, or sometimes you don't if you play characters like I do that are never very dexterous. And then depending upon how high your roll was for initiative, that determines your order in the combat. And then, spell slots.
And something I've noticed a lot about D&D too is a lot of people are very apprehensive to play, those who want to play D&D, because they'll go, oh man, I can't do a voice. It's like, yes, I can do different accents very well. There's people in other games I play that don't use accent at all. It doesn't matter because it's an imaginary world in everybody's head. Voices don't matter. So if anybody ever says, oh, you can't do this because you can't do a voice, that's not true. The thing is having imagination, being able to have fun with the game with your friends. That's pretty much what D&D is about. Like, as a DM, yes, it's important for me to be able to go from being like a dwarf like this the entire time to switching over to being an elf whenever I need to talk to the party calmly. It's pretty much, I would say, the DM, it's a good trait to have, but even as a DM, you don't have to be able to do voices.
It is. It really is just something, like I said earlier, it's a hobby to do with your friends. And a lot of people are very hesitant, I have noticed, to like start to get into D&D because it's seen as, even though it's very popular right now, it's still somewhat seen as this very nerdy, very geeky kind of, oh, I'm pretending to be an edgy rogue kind of thing. But once you are able to get past that and you're just hanging out with your friends and having a good time and interacting in this fantasy world, D&D becomes so good and so much fun and just a wonderful, wonderful experience overall.
Yeah, and speaking as an outsider to this conversation, I guess I noticed that it is becoming more popular, at least referencing it. I'm a big fan of the Big Bang Theory, which is the show that they talk about geek culture a lot. You know, they embrace it, but they also kind of poke fun at it, which is awesome. And they play D&D a lot in different episodes. And that's kind of what piqued my interest in playing it. There was an episode where they had like a group of celebrities that were playing D&D and they were trying to get invited to play that game. And I didn't realize that a lot of the actors who were guest starring actually do play D&D in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, cool. So this is a lot. There's a lot of people who want to gatekeep it, don't want to like new people to play. But I've encountered people anyone who's played it have always invited me and be like, come on, play with us. But then whenever I, inquire as to when can we play, crickets. So I haven't had the opportunity to join in and play. I have a friend who is really big into D&D, but he is never really around, unfortunately. I actually wanted to invite him to see if he could join us in this conversation, but I figured, maybe another time. But D&D does sound very interesting. As someone who loves role-playing games, as someone who loves genre of like, fantasy, magic, dragons, and so on, like you think that I would have been playing this a while ago. Unfortunately, I'm also the kind of person that didn't have a whole lot of friends. So, kind of makes it a little bit hard. But enough about my sob story. Let's go back to D&D.
Oh, no, it's the same about me. Like, where I grew up, I had like no friends to play D&D with. And it took me till I got online and started playing D&D that way. Like, I've been DMing online for almost 11 years. I'm running my very first in-person game now. It took me 10 years to be able to run an in-person game. Well,
I will say the true big bad evil guy of any Dungeons and Dragons campaign is session 1 and session 2, because everybody's got scheduling issues, so you have to find this perfect magical day and this perfect little magical window of time that all of your friends can get together. And in my experience, even if you are able to get to session 1, that's wonderful. That's great. That's fine. That's fabulous. If your session stops at session 2, you'll never play that game again.
Yep.
So session 2 is by far, in my opinion, the most important session of them all, because it sets this
precedent
standard. Yes, it sets a precedent of we're going to actually meet at this little, perfect date and time, and we will continue this campaign.
Well, the next one I want to hit on is our favorite race. I'm going to give the floor to Emma, then I'm going to move to Larry, then I'll move back to me.
Mine is actually the Aasimar race. I think they are super interesting. Aasimars they're not one of the main races from the Dungeons and Dragons core rulebook.
Are those the bird people?
No, that's an Aarakocra or...
No. Okay, sorry.
They do get wings, though, so I get that. Aasimars sometimes they're half human, half deity kind of figures, But in the lore, what they are is you had a divine something in your bloodline, and you have been graced with tiny powers of the gods. They make phenomenal paladins, which is actually my favorite class to play. They get, I think it's level 3. There's different subsections of them, so you can be a fallen Azamar, where you're Edgelord Supreme, and you like exude this dark black power and fighting people for free, which is a great bonus action to have at level 3. There's the Scourge Azamar, which are fire, so you literally, like, your body becomes wreathed in flames, and anybody who gets near you has to take fire damage. And then there are the, I want to say light Azamars, I could be wrong, but they're the traditional, like, what you think of when you think of an angel, like glowing. People take radiant damage from you, and they're just phenomenal. They're so much fun to play. Very much enjoy be a good Azamar.
Larry.
I just really enjoyed my first character, who was a bugbear ranger, and he had advantage on stealth, even though he was like 6 feet tall.
Explain what a bugbear is.
They're actually one of the monsters of D&D, which has now become a playable class as well, and they're fun.
All right.
I did look up, trying to prepare for this episode, I did look up some, and some did sound interesting. I just didn't know, like Larry just said, that, you know, his character, the race wasn't originally a playable race, and now they are. So I have a list. I have it in front of me on my phone. I don't know if these are all playable now or if some of them are not. So if I mention one that is not, please forgive me. But there were 3 that I really liked. One of them was the half elf. I just liked what I read about them. There was one that was a water elemental, but for some reason I am not finding it.
The Genasi?
Yes, that one. The water one. Because I like water. Water, any time that I can have water powers, I'm good.
The Genasi are essentially genies. They're the children of genies. And in this world, you have, the water Genasi, the fire Genasi, the earth Genasi, and the air Genasi. I have always wanted to play. I actually have a genie lamp tattoo. I love genies. I think they're incredible. I'm writing a book about them. But I've always wanted to play a Genasi, but I always like falter at the last second. And I always end up playing either an elf, a tiefling, or an Azamar. Like, those are my 3 go-tos every time.
What was the third one?
And the third one was the one that I mentioned earlier that I cannot pronounce, the bird people.
The Aircock
one. That one. Yeah, I would butcher that pronunciation. So those are the ones that I looked at this list online, and those are the ones that appealed to me.
Have you seen the D&D movie yet?
I have not.
You need to watch it because you're going to love the Nair Cochran there named Jarnathan. Best character in the first.
It's very important that Jonathan be here.
It's very, very important Jonathan be here. I have 2 favorite races, and I was trying to decide when you were talking which one I was going to choose, and I can't. I have to talk about both of them. One of them that's my number 1 go-to is tieflings. I love tieflings. Basically, like the Aasimar, where they are descendants of something from the astral plane, the gods. Tieflings are bloodline of the demonic, which are demons or devils, and they are humans that basically have that blood in them. They'll have horns, they'll have tails, their skin will be different, their eyes will be different, and people hate them a lot. They are very, very racially profiled in a lot of the lore of D&D, and I like playing them because I feel like almost a freedom where I can play this thing and prove to other people, hey, look, you're wrong about me. Watch me do these cool things. I think tieflings just have a certain charisma about them that you kind of need to have to play them. And the other race I love absolutely, which can also be interchanged with a different one, is called a doppelganger, or also known as a changeling. I love that so much. I love being able to change into different things, and Emma can attest to this. I am very good with changing on the fly from being a DM, so being a changeling is so much fun to me. I'll just be like, there's a person over here that you need to get past his house. All right, I'm going to turn to this guy and walk past his guards. We just like, no, didn't you? Obviously imagining something. I'm just going to keep going on. That's basically what you do as a changeling / doppelganger. It's so much fun.
I just noticed that race on the list. I didn't scroll all the way down, and I just saw changeling, and I'm like, and yeah, so I agree. I want to add that to my list as well.
Oh, yeah. Emma, what is your favorite monster?
At my core, I'll deny it all day long, but at my core, I'm a dragon girly. I love the dragons. I don't know that I would say they're my absolute favorite monster in the entirety of Dungeons and Dragons because I adore illithids and beholders to death, but I'll stick with dragons. Dragons in D&D are incredibly interesting because you can have there's different
Chromatic
types
and
of
metallic.
yeah, there's different types of dragons. So, and not just like the color or like what their breath weapon is. So some will have an ice cone, some will have an acid cone, some will have a poison cone, as opposed to the traditional fire cone of breath. But you have, as Coots was saying, you have the chromatic dragons and you have metallic dragons. And the chromatic dragons are what you think of when you think of big bad evil dragon out to get all the gold in the world and being evil and burning towns and the evil guys that you have to fight against. And the metallic dragons are actually really good guys, and they are very open to working with the races of mortals and assisting them. I've had at least 2 different campaigns in my time where our benefactor was a metallic dragon, and we'd go to their cave and we would get these quests from them, and they were just generally trying to make the world a better place and to kind of guide our party to do good things and to help people out. Of course, they're dragons, so they fly and they're gorgeous, and also they can be really, really good or they can be really, really, really evil.
We also forgot the fact they can also turn into and appear as humans for any race they decide to. In one of my games, I think Emma forgot, one of the kings of that main storyline was a ancient red dragon, one of the biggest, baddest. But they thought he was their friend because they're very charismatic, and I was able to trick them, making them all think that this is the best thing for the kingdom until they figured out. Like that's one of the cool things about dragons you can do is that twist. And you can also make chromatic dragons good and make metallic dragons evil. It's whatever you want to do. D&D is a playground of whatever you want to do.
When you asked what the favorite monster was, and Emma said dragons, I was like, dragons for Dungeons and Dragons. Groundbreaking. But I know Miranda Priestley joke there, but I love dragons too. That's all.
Probably my favorite D&D monster is the Beholder. And again, like Emma, I also love the Illithids. They're so much fun. And when you have those brain-eating boys, they're so great.
Do you want me to explain further, Larry?
Sure, go right ahead.
Basically, there are things that live in this thing called the Underdark. It's the basically imagine a giant cave system underneath the earth. Mind flayers, are also known as illithids, are a giant hive mind collection of these little tadpoles that will go inside of somebody's brain, through their eye or through the nose or through the ear, and they will turn you into this octopus-looking humanoid. And they are very strong with magic. They are a giant hive mind, so they know everything, where it's going on when. And they eat brains. They have beaks that will break into your skull and eat your brains. And if they don't do that, they can put a tadpole in your ear, and you will go through ceramorph. How do you say them?
Ceramorphosis.
Fuck it.
Don't worry, I'm intimately familiar with the process, as I can't put Baldur's Gate 3 down.
I know.
I'm actually going to, my next paycheck, I'm going to buy Baldur's Gate 3. I'm going to play it. And I know that it, D&D, whatever. And I was reading about the game and I was like, wait, these characters you're talking about, these monsters, they're in that game. So
it translates very, very well. That game did a very good job of translating D&D into a video game.
Almost seamlessly. I personally, one of the only things that I have found that is not an actual rule in the 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons is that you can't push people as a bonus action, which is heartbreaking when you go from Baldur's Gate to an actual table because you take your action and then you say, can I push them as a bonus action? And your DM always says no. So sad. But but if you do play Baldur's Gate 3, which personally I highly recommend, it's made by Wizards of the Coast. It's created by the people who created
Larian
the world
Studios.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry.
Licensed
Sponsored
from.
by Wizards of the Coast. Copyright to Larian Studios. Thank you, Larian Studios, for everything you've done for me. But it does take place in the world of Runeterra. It takes place on the Sword Coast, which is the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
I'm sorry, where does it take place at?
Sword Coast.
Faerun.
Not Runeterra. I'm gonna lose my
Faerun.
mind. I'm thinking League of Legends right now.
I know you are. That's why I was like, excuse me?
That's so embarrassing. Look, it's a beer Toril, okay? I'll go turbo nerd if I have to.
So with me, my personal, also before I say that, Karlach is the best character in Baldur's Gate 3, fight me. My favorite monster is something
Spoilers.
that is very, very, very underused and appreciated. It's called an aboleth. What an aboleth is this fish that lives in underwater ponds. You're like, okay, it's a fish. What's cool with the fish? These things can mind control you. They can twist your mind. They can bend you to their will. And you can't really do anything because they're in the water. Unless you want to go for a swim and fight a monster that is native to the water, you basically just have to get away from it. But by the point you try realizing to get away from it, you're already caught in its trap. And I love aboleths because they are one of the most terrifying Cthulhuan Lovecraftian monster, in my opinion, in 5e, and I love aboleths. I need to use them more, but I think they're one of the coolest concepts for the monsters in D&D.
They literally have an ability called Enslave, where they just charm you, and you just can't do anything until the aboleth dies. And they're terrifying. They I want to say they live in the Underdark as well.
They do not. It's have to, but that's mostly where they live.
The Underdark is probably one of my favorite settings. I am an elf girly. I was in love with Legolas as a child, and that has shaped so much of my adult life. And the Underdark is fascinating. So there's a race of elves that live in the Underdark. There's several races that live specifically to the Underdark, but my favorite in the Underdark are the Drow, or the Dark Elves. They are deeply hated because they are deeply evil. They are not good people. However, they have a matriarchal society. So the women are, matriarchal society. Women are top bosses. The dudes just have to follow the ladies' orders. And I love that for them so much.
It is a matriarchal society. Men are second-class citizens. And there's a few good drow, like Driss O'Durden, who I love Driss O'Durden, who has a whole book series on him. A lot of people play drow, like my friend Squishy only plays drow pretty much. He loves drow. And in Baldur's Gate 3, Minthara is awesome. But the spoilers.
Coots, rolling back to your favorite monsters, I thought for sure you were going to say Bodak.
No, I love Bodax, though, because he doesn't love something that is a human that's been corrupted by the Shadowfell, entering into our realm and sucking out your soul. What is this, their deadly
Marriage?
visage? It's basically marriage, but with more steps.
Also, you can't use healing spells or potions when you're within a certain range of them.
20 feet. You go down, you're just going to die, unless you kill the monster.
That is my kryptonite right there.
I
I love my healing spells.
I love Bodax so much. Emma, what is a funny story or experience you have with D&D?
Okay, since we're on the topic of the Underdark, this was actually in one of Coots' games. He was the dungeon master, and I was one of the players. Our party was journeying through the Underdark, and we ran into an illithid. And we had a wizard in our party, and typically wizards are known to be like power hungry. They learn their magic from intense study and preparation. It doesn't really come naturally to them. They have to study everything that they are able to do. Wizards also a great class, love them because they can learn new spells. They're like the only class that can do that. Anyway, we had a wizard. Wizard player, I guess, got tired of playing with us or something and decided to just go out with a bang. So as we're talking to this mind flayer, our wizard decides that he would like to join the mind flayer, that the grand design doesn't sound also terrible. The grand design is the illithid, basically overarching plot to turn every living creature into an illithid, take over the world. And he's like, yeah, the grand design doesn't sound that bad. I could deal with some tentacles on my face. And he decides to turn against our party. And all of our comrades, just whatever, screw us. I'm going to go join the illithid. So when combat initially breaks out, because, mind flayer, they're big bad guys, they want to eat our brains, and we have to fight this guy for our lives, the wizard turns on us. Wizards are also characteristically very, very squishy, and they do not have a lot of health, so the fight did not go well for our wizard friend, and we ended up pushing him into one of the crevices in the Underdark. Come to find out later, I did not know this at the time, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and I ended up learning some more from Coots' perspective, which is as our wizard friend was falling, well, ex-friend at this point, what a breakup. As he was falling, he casted the spell Featherfall. So essentially, when he did hit the ground, he would do so very lightly and would, bounce or splatter. So he survived. We all assumed that he died, that he, fell out of this crevice and just died. And we were like, okay, whatever, wizard guy's done. No, he lived. And Coots was kind of mad at him for turning on the party because, that's not the point of Dungeons and Dragons. The point of Dungeons and Dragons is to work as a team. And so he gets to the bottom of this crevice and he's like, okay, what do I see? And Coots was like, you see no way back up. You can wander around, but there is no way out of this crevice. And later on in the game, our party still wandering through the Underdark, we actually did come across the skeleton of our dear old friend who had essentially starved to death in the Underdark. And that was probably one of my favorite things ever.
You actually messed that part up. He
I?
didn't starve to death. Remember when he fell down, it's like you see a campfire in the distance and he walked towards it. It was a guy that was trapped down in that crevice and he ended up eating his character.
That's even better.
Yeah, he was cannibalized.
Better. Yeah, good. Try to turn on the
Wow.
party. You deserve that.
You guys don't play.
No, I whenever I DM and somebody decides to mess up or mess with the party, I'm just like, okay, we're gonna go to Coots rules now. Be prepared.
So if I make you angry during one of these games, you're going to have somebody eat me.
Oh,
Got it.
no. Anger is fine. If you decide to say, I'm going to mess and fuck around with the party and not follow the storyline and try to side with the bad guys, I will then make sure your character has the worst fate possible and that you will either A, never come back to my games, or B, you will understand, hey, I probably shouldn't do that when I make my new character.
So you're going to fuck around and find out.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There's a certain pie chart. The more you fuck around, the more likely you're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Larry.
This was another one of Coots' games. One of the characters had a magical item on his person that he absolutely needed to use and would not take no for an answer. We were winning a battle. Like, within the next 2 people, it was going to be done. This dude decides to toss a magical bean in this fight, which ends up spawning a pyramid in a small building,
It was the second floor of a castle.
which also summons a mummy lord. And it also starts just spawning mummies that we now have to fight as well. So things continue on. We end up having to fight our way through this new problem that just got created, on top of already being exhausted from our fight with a vampire. We get to the Mummy Lord, we defeat him, and this guy decides to walk over to the sarcophagus and eat the heart from inside. It was great times.
I was using the Grim Hollow book too, and he slowly started becoming a fiend.
I wonder if it tasted like Victorian paint.
Probably did. But to give you some context, Emma and everybody else that's listening to this that plays D&D, they were fighting a vampire that had a wall of force up so they couldn't pass it, with Black Avishai coming through the windows attacking them, along with vampire spawn. Then the pyramid spawned. Then a mummy lord came out and they fought mummies. Then they had to deal with the Sphinx. Then they had to deal with the Minotaur. Then they got to the crypt. They were all level 9.
Yeah, it was a lot.
That is probably one of my favorite aspects of Dungeons and Dragons, because I like having no context in the story. There's one bit that I can glean from. That is these magic beans that you're talking about. There's more than likely that's like probably a D100, is it?
That's a D12.
D12. So in the book with these magic beans, there are 12 totally different things that could have happened.
Like, Jack and the
And-
Beanstalk, like where you have the bean
Yeah.
or the giant beans. That's one of the effects that could happen.
So when they threw this magic bean, it's just leaving it up to chance, leaving it up to random, and that's what it chose. That's what fate chose, was this magic pyramid with this mummy lord, all this stuff. And that's one of my favorite parts of Dungeons and Dragons. Is you're so, like, you and your party can be so dead set on this one particular plan, and then you get a natural one, which is an automatic failure. It's a critical failure. And your whole plan just crumbles right in front of you. And then on the fly, you have to think of something entirely different because life just doesn't go the way you plan it to. and that is very much reflected in Dungeons and Dragons.
One of the other things. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Coots. That player also played a wild magic sorcerer, right?
Yes, named Diogenes.
Yeah. So his entire character was leave it up to chance. He was the definition of fuck around and find out.
Yes.
Character.
And Jose, to give you a story that is very near and dear to my heart, to give you an idea of how different players interact. So you know how like in stories like the big bad evil guy is coming over to the village and there's gonna be this giant boss fight between the heroes and the villains. One of my very first games, I had a player that I used to live with called Chris. We're not gonna mention his last name. There was an ancient black dragon, which is a very scary thing that was after them. And I had given him a magic item because he requested it. I didn't know what this magic item fully did. And I was very new to DMing, like, sure, yeah, you can have this magical item. And when the black dragon came to fight them, he trapped it inside of the crystal and basically made it work for him because that's how the magic item works. So basically the whole boss fight never happened. He just had a little dragon, basically a Pokemon shell, but it was a crystal. That and the other one where they fought a shadow dragon instead of a mountain and they cast an earthquake inside the mountain and just tore the mountain in half. And they're just like, that did literally not. It's a dragon. It's not going to harm the dragon. It can fly. Everyone, you would just hurt yourself for no reason.
That was me.
I know that was you.
I was the one who did that. I thought I was being clever. I was like, I'll bring the mountain down around the dragon. No.
No, you did not. No. Do you have any questions, Jose, from our stories? Anything kind of pop in your brain?
Do I have questions?
Yes.
What is D&D? No, I'm kidding.
I literally just explained this to you.
No, I mean, I understood everything that you guys explained. Obviously, from 1 hour long conversation, I am not going to know all the races, all the skills, all the monsters, and so on. I mean, I know not to, throw a magic bean inside of the second story of a castle or cast earthquake on a dragon while on a mountain. These are valuable life lessons, and I'm glad to have learned them. But I am very interested in trying this out. Thanks to Coots, I actually realized that there are virtual games that I could join if I don't have anybody local to play with. So that's something I can look into. And if you guys are like me and you don't know about D&D, or you do, but you haven't had a chance to try it, that might be one option for you. Maybe Coots can elaborate on how you can find and join something like that. But yeah, so now I guess I can't wait to play and create my own character and see what I am, who I am.
Personally, my number one recommendation is D&D Beyond, followed by Roll20. If you have a group of friends, get Fantasy Grounds on Steam. That's what I run my games on. But that one is very much you need to have friends, and Fantasy Grounds is a bit pricey. Roll20 is free, and D&D Beyond is somewhat free. And it's just, that's the easiest way to get in is D&D Beyond or Roll20 if you don't have a group of friends that would play with you online. Also,
Roll20 is pretty good.
It is.
I've used Roll20 before. I
still
personally do prefer. I prefer Fantasy Grounds just because it's a dedicated program for Dungeons and Dragons. But Roll20 is, in my opinion, a solid second.
And to give you an idea too, Jose, the amount of stuff you can do with D&D, I am in a cyberpunk D&D game. Somebody literally changed everything with cyberpunk and made it into a D&D game. I have played a Western D&D game, like Wild West. The people have changed a lot of D&D to be able to fit numerous different. I played a Mass Effect D&D, which I sent you the rules to.
Yeah, last episode you showed me that there was a Mass Effect one, and I'm like, I am intrigued. That's not what I said, but I don't want to say what I said.
One of the other things I'd say is if you are going into Roll20, if you're going to be the DM, you also want to know how to make websites because there's so much back-end work that you're going to have to do.
As a DM on both Fantasy Grounds and Roll20, it's basically you're learning programming as you're doing it.
One of my favorite, personal favorite systems that I've ever played in is the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, which is based off of the books for Game of Thrones. So it takes place in Westeros. Part of the reason that it is my favorite, or one of my favorite RPG systems, is because not only do you have the combat system where everyone has armor and swords or bows and arrows and shields or whatever, there's a secondary combat system. There's actually a tertiary combat system as well, but the secondary combat system is for intrigue specifically. So in Dungeons and Dragons, if you want to talk to somebody or get your way through words instead of through violence, you roll a persuasion check or a deception check or an intimidation check, and that is essentially the end of the intrigue part of it. Is you either pass or fail. But in the Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, there's a whole other combat system. You have a secondary set of hit points called your willpower. And then you still roll like persuasion or intimidation or deception or whatever, but there are different ways to do that. Like you can blanket threat, you can bribe, you can do all of these different things, and you and this other intrigue combatant are slowly wearing each other's willpowers down. And then there's the tertiary combat system that I mentioned a second ago, which is full-scale war. So your house would have a legion of spearmen or a legion of cavalry, and not a full legion, of course, is in terms of Romans, but I think it's more like 100 people is a legion in that game. But yeah, you have full-scale warfare, and that also translates to naval battles as well. And that is just so much fun, and it's a little more complicated because 5e is almost dare I say simpler. But yeah.
You were having the tisms there for a second.
Look, I talk with my hands, okay?
I'm Latino. I'm all about talking with my hands. So
meanwhile, my hands are just sitting in my lap. So 2 things we forgot: 1, our favorite class, and B, our favorite spell. Emma?
My favorite class. I got 3. They're
No,
all charisma
you have 1.
I have 1. It is Paladin. I love Paladins. Paladins are holy warriors of a god, and they're half-casters, so they're phenomenal in physical combat. They're also, because their spellcasting modifier is their charisma, they tend to have very high charismas as well, so they're also really good talkers. So it's not like a barbarian where you just hit shit and that's what you do. Like that's your one-trick pony. You can fight, but you can also talk as well. Paladins are kind of known to be like the lawful good, stick up my ass, goody two-shoes type character. But if you start like looking into them and finding all these little tiny tidbits you can do, or different deities, like a chaotic good deity or even a chaotic evil deity, you can change that paladin to become something entirely different and remove that stick up their ass, and they are just generally so much fun to play.
Larry?
I've not played all the classes as of yet. Current ones are a barbarian, a cleric, and soon to be playing a monk in Emma's campaign. Should be a lot of fun. But so far, my favorite that I've played was my ranger. Complicated enough, but also simple enough to be able to change things up. I know Coots absolutely hated my ability to cast pack tactics on my party. Gave them all advantage.
Everybody advantage in your party.
Yeah. He hated me.
Uh-huh.
We are, as of now, we're an audio only podcast. So for those of you who can't see Coots, he just gave Larry the middle finger. That's how mad he was.
I typically give him the middle finger. He could just say, "It's a nice day, isn't it?" And I'll flip him off. So for me, it was Warlock for the longest time. Warlock is now a very close second. I love Warlocks because basically I sell my soul to this great old being of this demon or this angel, and suddenly I get magical powers. But now it is 100% a bard. I love bards. Bards are the musician comedy person. They're the talker. They're the one that does all the silly things. So in the game I'm playing with Emma on Tuesdays, my bard is a Dampier, which is a half human, half vampire, and he talks like this the entire time. And basically, anytime he decides to mess with people, he'll just do it. And the thing you can do is, like, let's say Emma attacks somebody, she misses. I can be like, Bardic Inspiration, you got this, champ! And she can roll a die to see if she hits, because it adds on to her bonus. You become a pain in the ass for the DM, and I love being a pain in the ass. Like, it's...
And technically, you're a pain in the ass in the game, too. Because when you give this Bardic Inspiration, in the middle of combat, fighting for your life. The bard whips out their lute or their lyre, their flute, and they go do, and they sing a little song for you, and then that inspires you, and you're able to roll something else.
This like my bard only sings 90s rock songs. That's all my bard sings.
It reminds me of that again. I don't follow this one franchise either, but the toss a coin to your Witcher thing. That guy who's constantly singing, and I was like, can you do something other than sing and help out? Like,
no, that's a bard in a nutshell. Favorite spell?
Okay, combat goes. My favorite spell, and I actually did not even know the spell existed until Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and it is a constant now for me. My favorite combat spell is Spirit Guardians, because essentially what you do is you summon these spirits to guard you, and they just circle around you, and your body becomes the weapon, and you just sprint through the battlefield, pinging people with this like ring of protection around you, and it does an absolute assload of damage. It's phenomenal. And as far as, I guess technically it's a combat spell, but it doesn't have to be a combat spell. But probably my favorite cheese spell to use is Banishment, where you just point at, you can flip me off all you want. It's a great fucking spell. Thank you.
Yes, yes it is.
You point your finger at somebody, a person or an enemy or whatever. They have to make a save. Typically it's a very high save. And if they fail, they get banished from this plane of existence. They just poof out of existence and poof into the astral plane or the Shadowfell or the Abyss or wherever. They just go somewhere else that is not where you are at that current moment in time. I love that spell.
I hate it.
I love that spell. It's so good. If you're being overwhelmed in a fight, you just banish the big baddie or one of the little underlings that's hitting you like a truck, and then you don't have to deal with them for 10 turns, and you can focus on something else, and then they return.
Or if it's not their native realm, they get stuck in the place you banish them to as they go back home. AKA a Bone Devil that happened in my real life campaign that should have been a more difficult fight. But no, someone in this chat used banishment on it.
I don't know what you're talking about. There was no untoward lowering the DC of a fight.
What is your favorite spell, Larry?
For my ranger, it was the pack tactics.
That's an ability. That wasn't really a spell. That was a racial ability.
No, it was a spell. I had to cast it, and I only had so many. It was like a level 3 spell or something. I can't remember. But for my cleric, because it's a cantrip and it does a crap ton of damage as your character levels up, Toll the Dead. Because so either you're gonna do a D10's worth of damage if they've taken no damage their first time. If they have damage on them, that moves to a D12. And as you go from being like level 1 through 4, from 5 upwards, it's going to be 2D10 or 2D12. And that's just a lot of fun.
My favorite spell. I'm gonna have a little. Let's have a scenario together, Jose. That way we have you more incorporated into this episode.
Thank you.
Let's say that you have a wish, a single wish, and you get to make it. What would you wish for, and how would you word it?
What would I wish for, and how would I word it? I've always wanted to have the power to fly.
Okay. How would you ask for it? See, I wish, and then say what your statement would be.
I wish for the ability to fly.
So with wish spell, you can wish for anything you want. It's a very high level spell, but there's always a caveat on how you word it. So with me as a DM, I'd be like, okay, you can fly. And you're just gonna keep going up and 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 up, and you couldn't get back down.
Wonka.
It's basically you drank the fizzy juice, now you're just floating up. That is what wish is, and I love using it in the games because players will always think they'll find a way around me with a wish spell with how they word it. I will sit for a week straight, just reading how they said this to find a way to screw them over.
Now, is that something you do as a DM?
As a DM, yes. Wish spell is something that you always want to have. Unless they word it perfectly, there's always a repercussion for wish because it's such a strong spell. It's just, you'd be like, I wish all the bad guys were dead. Boom, all the bad guys are dead. That creates a void, more bad guys appear. That's basically what wish does. And it's a very strong spell, but that's why there's negatives to it.
There's also...
You gotta be careful with the wish like that, because anyone can be perceived as bad, so you can end up dead yourself.
Exactly.
There's also the caveat with the wish spell that every time you cast it, I want to say it's a 1 in 3 chance. I read that somewhere, I could be wrong. But there is a chance that you will never be able to cast it ever again.
Yes.
And you just lose it entirely.
So we are running a little long. I don't want to be the party pooper. Before we do, I want to just, because you guys said what your favorite stories about D&D were. I have never played or anything, but if I may share some of the things that I experienced that made me want to try it. First of all, this conversation right here, you guys can't see Coots or Emma. I can. And they all get like this really goofy, geeky smile on their faces when they're talking about their characters, their classes. That right there makes me want to play. But also, again, I'm going to go back to Big Bang Theory. There was this one episode where the character of Sheldon Cooper does not like Christmas. So his friend Leonard, who is their dungeon master usually, decides to do a Christmas-themed D&D game. And I said, I don't know if that's something that people normally do just for fun or whatever, but
I just
thought that was so...
Yeah, it is.
How did you?
Yeah.
So that was something that was so cute and so cool. And I really want to play this game. I figured that the closest I would ever get is playing Baldur's Gate 3. As my microphone flies out of my hand. So, just seeing people's interactions with each other, seeing it portrayed on sitcoms and movies, not always in a positive light, unfortunately. Just seeing that, and also I play a game. It's not Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of the characters, like the races and stuff, are in this game in parody form. It's called Munchkins. I absolutely love that game. I have an X-Men version of it, but that one's not silly. But the original Munchkins is basically, it takes classes from like D&D, World of Warcraft, stuff like that, and they add it to this game. There's a little card game, and just kind of poke fun at it in a nice way. It's not like, I don't think it's done offensively. Playing that actually made me want to play the actual D&D. I think this is obviously a very fun game. I think it does get a bad rap with just how it's portrayed in the media. Very few movies and TV shows portray it in a good way. Usually it's a girl, like a hot girl, and she meets a guy and she finds out that he likes D&D. She's like, nope, goodbye. So it's not always portrayed in the best light. There are plenty of shows and stuff that, talk very well about it. So I appreciate you guys talking to me about this for an hour, letting me know what you guys like about it. I still don't know what class, race, or anything I would like to be for my character. Although I did discover the Dragonborn.
Oh yeah, Dragonborn are fun.
And they look pretty cool. So who knows? Maybe we'll do a part 2 after I play a little bit and I can tell you what my character is. We'll see.
And then we can answer the question I wanted to ask, what our favorite gods are. And Larry answered type more of. I'm not going to answer mine, and then you're not going to answer yours. We'll tell each other after we end the session, the podcast. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Tune in next week for, I don't know what yet. You'll have to find out with us because we are horrible at scheduling what we're going to talk about next. But it's going to be something
we
nerdy.
Definitely know.
100%. We definitely know. 100%.
Yeah, we definitely know what it's going to be. Yes.
We're professionals here.
Hola.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Adios.